Good morning, Digit fam. Adam Dowd here for another day, but a very, very busy day of technology. We reeled in a couple of big ones yesterday, which is fine because if I'm honest, I shorted y'all a bit yesterday. I think the final runtime was 6 minutes, 55 seconds or something, so buckle in. We're going to be here for a while, and we're going to welcome our first guest commentator besides. It is May 14th, 2019, and this is your Digit Daily. Well, boy, where to start today? Okay, so we had two pretty big stories drop yesterday. Either one of them would be a featured story by itself. Hell, either one of them would be the subject of a 45-minute podcast by itself, but we don't have 45 minutes. We have 7, and yet here I am rambling on without just getting to the... Sorry. Lenovo invited a few YouTubers to check out a prototype of a new kind of folding... Oh, crap. Haven't we already seen this movie? Oh, what? It didn't break? Huh. Well, that's good. Besides, this is a prototype. This is decidedly not on sale, nor will it be anytime soon. All the same, we got some good looks at it. Basically, what we're looking at is a 13-inch tablet that folds in half into a little folio-looking notebook. The tablet can be used as a tablet, it can fold halfway into kind of a book format, or it can fold a little bit more into a laptop configuration with a touchscreen keyboard or writing surface on the bottom and content on the top half. Plus, the device comes with a keyboard and a pen. Are you paying attention, Apple and Microsoft? The physical keyboard is meant to be used while the tablet is open and standing up like a computer monitor. The pen hooks onto a loop on the cover of a device, and speaking of that cover, it's a leather-like material that is built into the outside of the case. From the videos that I watched, it doesn't look like there are any gaps where debris could enter the device, unlike the Samsung Fold. This is made possible because one side of the tablet isn't static. It slides up and down on the body as it needs to conform to the folded state. It's a little hard to describe in a podcast, so be sure to check out the videos in the show notes to get the full picture. The bottom line here is that Lenovo has an impressive-looking prototype that, as far as we know, survived a whole day in the hands of reviewers, which is already a forward step. Plus, we know this device isn't coming until at least 2020, and it will not be cheap. This is not an $800 laptop. This is a multi-$1,000 futuristic device that is really cool. But is it necessarily practical? We'll have to wait until 2020 to find out. Meanwhile, over at Apple, they got some big news of their own. Not the kind of big news that they wanted, but big news nonetheless. The Supreme Court ruled 5-4 against Apple in a Supreme Court case yesterday. A group of iPhone users alleges that Apple has a monopoly of power and that the 30% commission that Apple takes from App Store purchases is unlawful. Apple argued that only, quote, direct purchasers of a service were eligible to bring forth an antitrust lawsuit. Since iPhone owners are buying apps from developers, not from Apple, they couldn't file a suit. The Supreme Court disagreed, as written by Justice Kavanaugh, saying, quote, the plaintiffs purchased apps directly from Apple and therefore are direct purchasers, just like my weightlifting buddies Timmy and Squee and Mike and Bulldog Benny. We caught up with the Apple whisperer Rene Ritchie from Mobile Nations and Vector and asked him about the decision. Here's what he had to say.
My thoughts in general on the Supreme Court ruling as it relates to Apple is that the US has always looked at consumer pricing as the be-all, end-all of this kind of regulation. In this specific case, it looks like they didn't apply the law the way you would expect, a way that would protect from both developers and customers both suing Apple over the same damages. And that's curious and probably suboptimal when it comes to how law is interpreted in general in the US. And it's also very different than the EU, which has prioritized market competition when it comes to this sort of regulation. But either way, the case still has to go to court. This doesn't change anything regarding the merits of the case, and the merits of the case don't really look very good. And that, again, doesn't change with any of this. I find it hard to believe that Apple can actually be accused of any sort of monopoly abuse when it comes specifically to keeping app prices artificially high. Because if anything, Apple has been almost singularly blamed for the race to the bottom for devaluing apps, from taking them from scarcity to ubiquity. And apps are so cheap now, or maybe even free, that developers struggle to feed their families. It's not sort of the gold rush of the past or the premium business of the bucks in the store type of days. So there are probably cases that you could argue where Apple and its model aren't ideal. This just does not sound like one of those.
Thanks, Rene, and welcome to the Digit Daily. Awesome stuff. As for me, I think Rene and I are on the same page, but I'm going to go a scooch further in this one. In my humble and definitively not legal opinion, this is the right decision for the wrong reason. When a user buys an app from the App Store, they're not buying the app from Apple. They are, in fact, buying it through the developer. But Apple's closed system means that you have no other choice as to where you buy that app, and that's really the problem here. Maybe legally they have to say this wrong thing to get the right thing done, but personally I kind of have a problem with that. I'm no fan of the fact that everything Apple is Apple's way or GTFO, but is Android's way much better? Do what you want, we don't care, install apps from unknown sources? That's a stance that Google has been steadily walking back for the past, 3 to 4 years now? But the distinction between Google and Apple here is that Google says it's a bad idea to install apps from unknown sources, while Apple says you can't install apps from unknown sources, which essentially gives Apple a monopoly on iOS app distribution. Is that legally wrong? I don't know. It's safer for the consumer, that's for sure, and that's probably why that choice was made. Anyway, as Rene said, this case still needs to see the inside of a courtroom for a long time before any kind of definitive conclusion can be reached, and Apple is confident it can win, and if there is one company that can literally spend more money than an entire class action lawsuit, it's probably Apple. Needless to say, we'll be keeping a close eye on these proceedings, but for now, it is time for the roundup! And as if today wasn't busy enough, OnePlus launched its OnePlus 7 series today, and we already know a ton about it. Actually, the event is playing as I write this script, but it'll be over by the time you hear this. Hey, you wanted to know how the sausage was made. They're pimping speed and 5G and a fluid AMOLED screen, which according to OnePlus is the first screen to be Quad HD, 90 Hz, and AMOLED. Have to go to the judges for that one, since I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm kind of doubtful about that. I'm sure we'll be talking all about this tomorrow, but for now, the phone goes on sale Friday at T-Mobile starting at $649, so at least they're still killing it on the pricing. Google explained that the Pixel 3a and the Pixel 3 Knockin' on Heaven's Door have headphone jacks, and the explanation is kind of crappy. Google said at that price point, Google wanted to offer more choice to consumers. So what, all us poor folk might not have that fancy Bluetooth stuff? You know what, Google? We have Bluetooth, but Bluetooth sucks. So give us the superior hardware at all price points, you And speaking of Apple, remember that Apple event we all suffered through? watched last month? Well, the Apple TV app launches today, so wow or something. NASA and the White House will ask Congress for an extra $1.6 billion with a B dollars next year so that they can meet the goals to put humans on the moon again by 2024. And while I'm excited that NASA and the White House are seemingly back on the space exploration wagon, or at least the sending people to explore space rather than a robot wagon, I'd be even more excited if this was genuine curiosity sending people to the moon and not some international measuring contest. That being said, beggars can't be choosers, so hold 'em steady, boys. I'll get the ruler. And speaking of giant now that I've stopped laughing about this next story, I can tell you about it, and yes, I'm 12 years old. Back in November of 2017, some Navy pilots were out for a training mission when they noticed that they were leaving behind some impressive contrails. Those are those white lines that flow behind airplanes, by the way. Well, they decided to get artistic with it and do a little skywriting. They drew a monster-sized in the skies of Washington State, and considering it was drawn by an airplane, it is objectively impressive. I'm not sure how this wasn't on my radar back in 2017, but today they released the findings of the investigation along with a partial transcript of the cockpit recording of the incident. No pun intended. And finally, speaking of airplanes, air travel may be going supersonic once again, and when I say supersonic, I mean really supersonic. A company called Hermes looks to develop a commercial airplane that can travel at speeds up to Mach 5 and get from New York to Paris in just under 13 digit dailies, or 90 minutes if math is hard. The plane will use mostly existing technologies. There's nothing fancy or new here, but it could be put into service by the mid-2020s. Overall, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this. I know I'll probably never fly on it, but that's not because I'm afraid. It's because I'm cheap. So that is going to do it for today's Digit Daily. If you'd like to learn more about any of these stories, check out the links in the show notes and subscribe to our daily newsletter on digit.com. And if you like what you heard, subscribe, leave a review, and don't forget to tell your friends about digitdailypod.com. Once again, I'd like to thank Rene Ritchie from Mobile Nations and Vector for appearing on today's edition of the Digit Daily. Would you like to hear more commentary from other personalities like that? Let me know at hello@digit.com. Once again, I'm Adam Dowd, Dead Technology on Twitter, and we'll talk again tomorrow.